Question number 3, Andrew Little.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Does the government intend to meet all the targets it has set? If so, why does it think setting those targets was important?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, we tend to make good progress towards those targets because they're focused on addressing some of New Zealand's biggest challenges. For example, we set practical targets in the areas that contribute to material hardship and poverty. These include increasing infant immunisation rates, reducing rheumatic fever, increasing early childhood education participation and reducing the number of assaults on children.
Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Given the importance he places on targets, why does he oppose Judge Andrew Beecroft, the Children's Commissioner's target of reducing the number of children living in material deprivation by 10%?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Government's certainly not opposed to the individual components of what Judge Beecroft is talking about. And actually the government's been doing a great deal in terms of working on those, including increasing benefits and increasing working for family payments and increasing childcare assistance, just as an example. But it's important to understand my advice is that Judge Beecroft's target actually comes off a survey or a poll which is then factored up. So, Mr Speaker, I don't think that would actually be a terribly good measure. No, it doesn't.
Order.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Is the United Nations Committee on the Rights of the Child correct that there is, quotes, an enduring high prevalence of poverty among children in New Zealand, end quotes, and if not, why not?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, some children have been in poverty and some families in poverty for a very, very long time in New Zealand's history. I will say the United Nations report doesn't cover the point at which this government was the first government in 43 years to raise benefits for families with children. But, Mr Speaker, this government is extremely focused on the needs of those youngsters, and that's why we have individual targets on an individualised basis for a great many of them. But we do not believe, and the official advice does not support one single target for poverty.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Why are there more children living below the poverty line, more homeless children, more children in material deprivation, and more working families turning to food banks under his government?
That's right. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I'm sure I wholly accept the member's proposition, but some of those factors have been a result of the recession. But, Mr Speaker, the good news is that we have one of the fastest growth rates now in the OECD. As the Minister of Finance pointed out in the last answer, one of the fastest income growth rates in the last 8 years. But, Mr Speaker, that is the very reason why the government did things like not only support working for families in the most difficult times, but actually extend it. It's why we have free GP visits, Mr Speaker. It's why we were the first government in 43 years to raise benefits.
Order. Order.
Yeah. No.
Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Mr Speaker, what does he say to Ebony Andrews of Auckland, who, despite stringent budgeting and working as a learning support teacher, is forced to rely on charity for basics like food, clothing and shoes for her children?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, I simply don't know her circumstances.
Supplementary.
Order. Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Why does he think it's possible to kill every rat, stoat and possum across New Zealand, but it's impossible to ensure all our kids have a warm house to live in, good clothes to wear and food to eat?
Well, Mr Speaker,
the Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, actually this government has been more focused than probably any other government on making sure that youngsters are in a warm house. That's why we've insulated 300,000 homes, multiples more than the previous government did. That's why this government increased benefits for the first time in 43 years. That's why this government's been part of a program with Fonterra and Sanitarium for 7 million, for instance, 7 million breakfasts. But, Mr Speaker, the official advice doesn't support one single definition of poverty. And actually, interestingly enough, One of the reasons that you might not want to do that is because the opposition themselves say as soon as you put a label on a child, let's say they are now going to be the Ministry of Vulnerable Children, the member doesn't like it, but he wants every kid to...
Order. The answer's now drifting on for too long. Order.
Is that a label?
Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
In light of that answer, and in light of Judge Andrew Beecroft's statement that the $25 a week benefit lift hasn't made a material difference to many families, why doesn't he cut the crap, accept that there is a credible measure to be had, and measure his government's performance against it on child poverty?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I know the member's running out of staff at a great rate of knots, but he really needs to get some new and better lines and stop just proving to the country he's angry, Andrew, with no solutions to anything.
Order.